Welcome to Fresh Catholic, a podcast for those who are converting, reverting, or simply want a fresh perspective of the Catholic faith to help them to open their hearts and minds to become closer to the love and goodness of Christ. My daily prayer is that I will be a bright light to others, to be filled with the love and light of Christ, so that when people look at me, they see Him radiating out from me for His glory. Hello and welcome. I'm Lori Balderas, and I'm so happy you're here. Lenten check-in. Are you making progress? I hope so. Here we are, cruising along in Lent. Are you watching Fresh Catholic 40 on my Instagram and Facebook and getting inspiration from my tips and ideas for a productive Lent? I hope so. You can also go to my website, freshcatholic.com, to see the Lenten suggestion list there. Boy, that's a mouthful. Check it out, though. It's very well done on the website. Are you interested in helping support the Fresh Catholic ministry? We need you. Anything will help our mission, anything at all. The ways you can help us are as follows. You could become a Patreon. Just go to the website, freshcatholic.com, scroll down to the bottom left of any page, click on the Patreon icon, and join. Become one of my friends in my friend group. Check it out, please. Also, you could become an advertiser or sponsor. Let me advertise your business or product on my podcast. I would love to do that. Shop at our online store. There's lots of exclusive merchandise. There's something for everyone. Please go look and shop. Please purchase Fresh Catholic coffee. There's 17 flavors to choose from, and they're roasted and shipped the same day. Magical. Please invite me to your group to discuss different subjects and topics. I have lots to say. So invite me to your school or your Bible study or some other group. Let's get together. Please listen, rate, 5 stars, please, I would be so happy. Review and share my weekly podcast and Fresh Catholic Daily, the daily readings. We are on many platforms now and in 36 countries and counting. Woohoo! Awesome, awesome. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and more. Our goal is to get more and more people listening and draw people to Christ and back to the church. That is our mission. And now I would like to introduce and welcome my guest, Madeleine Karako. She is a wife and mother of 3 small children, Monica, Chris, and Caleb, and she lives in Texas. And she is coming to talk about motherhood and how all moms have challenges. But she's going to talk to us about challenges as a mother, challenges as a working mom, advice for moms who are struggling. She's had all sorts of different traumas and dramas with her pregnancies. So she is here to provide some inspiration and hope to moms out there that maybe are being kind of hard on themselves. So without further ado, here is my guest, Madeleine.
Hi, Lori. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so happy we're finally connecting.
Thank you for being so patient with me being pregnant and then having the baby and everything in between.
Well, there was nothing we could do about that. We had to play it out, didn't we? I know we originally thought, we'll just do the interview right before you have the baby. And then for one reason or another, it was postponed. And I'm kind of glad that it was, things have settled down a bit.
Yes, for sure.
And I love that you're in Texas, I'm in California, and we're FaceTiming doing this interview, and you're in your car.
Yes.
Which I love. I'm calling it the cone of silence.
How I get a quiet moment.
That's great. So anyway, I'm really happy you're here today. I know we've bounced around a few ideas of what we're going to talk about today, so that's what we're going to do. But before we get started, I would love it if you would tell my audience a little bit about yourself and your family dynamic. Things like, how were you raised? Where are you in the world today? As far as I already said, you're married with children, but but just give me a little background of where you're at today.
Sure. So I'm a cradle Catholic, so I was baptized as a baby. It's always been part of my life. My faith's always been important to me, but I had a really easy childhood. So my faith was never tested until I got older. So I think that was a huge blessing that God gave me, was just this very easy introduction into the faith where I just got to love him and feel very comforted, and it was easy going for a very long time. So a really nice foundation for me. And now married and 3 kids. We have 2 souls in heaven. Yeah, and that was one of the first challenges of my faith, was when we miscarried twice in a row, just really entering into this new realm of a relationship with God where he allowed a pretty substantial suffering to happen to me, and I couldn't understand it. And I think a lot of suffering really can deepen your faith if you allow it. And he and I kind of went through a rough patch in our friendship where I felt like I couldn't trust him after that happened, because it just seemed like such a sudden thing, if that makes sense. I never expected something like that to happen to me. I wanted to be a mom for as long as I could remember. And then that introduction to motherhood just felt so rough. And like I said, my childhood was so easy that I couldn't believe, my dear, dear friend, that God would let that happen. I was a very naive mother. I had never really thought much about it, except that I knew I really wanted to be a mom, and I had never thought about the practicalities of it, and miscarriages weren't on my radar. It had never been, I'd never known anyone to go through it. So when it happened, it was just this shocking thing. And at the same time, my husband was deployed when we lost our first one. And it was 3 months after we had gotten married that I miscarried. So we got pregnant right away and then miscarried right away. So it was just this like boom, boom, boom kind of introduction to married life and motherhood, and then my faith being shaken in that way. The suffering of it and being frustrated with God, it led to a deeper relationship. You know how with a friendship, if you've never had a fight, then is it really a friendship? Because either one or both of you isn't being honest if you've never argued about anything. So in that way, it was good for my faith.
So both miscarriages, were they pretty early on and then you had your 3 children? Or like, were those your 2 first introductions to being pregnant and miscarrying?
Yes, my first pregnancy, I was pregnant for, I guess it was 2 months, but the baby was only 5 weeks. But I carried the baby for 2 months and then miscarried and ended up having to get an emergency surgery. It was a whole thing. And then my second was very early on again. It was another miscarriage, and I lost at 10 weeks. And that time I didn't have to have a surgery, which was a huge blessing, and no medical complications. And then we sought help, and we were able to go to a full-term pregnancy with my daughter.
So it didn't discourage you so much that you didn't want to try?
No, I was determined. I knew that I wanted to be a mother, and we sought out, I think I talked about 5 different OBs, and a lot of them, unfortunately, will just say, keep trying, and after you've had a 3rd or 4th miscarriage, then we'll talk about. And that was the response I got from several, and I was like, no, I don't want to go through this again. I would like to get the test done now so that we can hopefully not have to go through this ordeal over again. So we went to a different state and sought out the help of a high-risk pregnancy OB, and he was the one that figured out what was going on for me. So we were able to move forward from there.
Interesting. I speak to a lot of women, young women, because I am a wedding coordinator. So,
right.
I do their weddings. And then, of course, the next natural thing is they want to start a family. And I know a lot of women really struggle with either getting pregnant, staying pregnant, or, like they miscarry the baby, or they're not getting pregnant to begin with. And it's very hard and it's very troubling, and they're very excited. And then it's this test, like God's testing them somehow. Or I do feel like a lot of women are in a similar boat. And a lot of them, I tell them, don't lose hope. God has a plan. God has his timing. But I know that that's also, I don't want that to come off as contrite or come off as just dismissive of, oh, stop complaining, you'll get pregnant. It's not about that, but it is truly trusting God's plan, and that can be really hard, and to not give up.
We'll be right back.
Rising anti-Semitism. New generations redefining how they connect with Jewish traditions. Changing dynamics among Jews around the globe. Take a deep dive into these topics and more on Mosaic, Exploring Jewish Issues, the podcast brought to you by the Jewish Federation of Palm Beach County. Hear from the thought leaders, politicians, scholars, and artists at the forefront of Jewish life today. Subscribe to Mosaic, Exploring Jewish Issues, wherever you listen to podcasts.
Absolutely. And it's so different for every woman that goes through it, and it can be, I think, even more traumatic when you carry the baby for longer. I've talked to friends of mine who have gone 24 weeks, and they, you have to go through labor and deliver. And I did too, but, I didn't hold an actual form, and I can't imagine going through that, but, and then being willing to risk going through that again, it's not that you're sad that you're not pregnant anymore. It's you're sad, that you don't get to meet that child and have the experiences you were looking forward to, all the things. And the only encouraging thing that kind of was pushing me through that grief of that was that they're in heaven, and that's my, huge motivator for me to be a good person so that I can get to heaven and meet my kids.
Oh, that's beautiful. So then you had the miscarriages, then you were able to conceive. You've conceived 3 times and have these 3 beautiful children. So that's really exciting. And now you are a working mom, right?
Yes.
I mean, all moms are working, you know what I mean. But you are doing an outside, or not an outside, but you're doing an additional job.
Right. And it's still hard for me to call it a job and to take myself seriously with it, it's just a growing process. I've been doing it for 2 years, so you would think by now I would feel official. But yes, I started an online shop with Catholic Christian gifts for families. And it sort of began as a result of another challenge in my faith. My midwife for my daughter and my first son, who was just this wonderful person. She died in a car accident. And when we found out, it was so strange because it's not like it was my grandmother or someone I was related to, but I was just absolutely overwhelmed and shaken because she was only 40.
Oh, gosh.
And she also this incredible person. And again, it was like this why question in my head. And she had delivered over 1,000 babies, but even that in that short lifespan. So she had done so much in her life already. And I was rocking my son to sleep, and my children, when they're babies, they sleep, maybe an hour at most at a time. And we have digestive issues, all kinds of things. So, it had been 6 months of sleeplessness, and I was rocking him to sleep, and I was praying to my midwife, Rebecca, and I said, take this night of sleeplessness and may it just bring you to heaven. If you're not already there, just get you there. And that night he slept through the night. This is the first he had ever done that. And I woke up and I thought, I panicked, and I ran to make sure he was still breathing. And then I realized, oh my gosh, Rebecca gave this to me. She's in heaven. Like, she's absolutely in heaven. And he slept like that for nearly a month.
Wow.
And that is when I started my business, because I just really felt like she had given me this gift of sleep, and that I wanted to do something with it. And at first I had no idea what I wanted it to be, but I just started creating things next to my children. And first started out just me putting things on Etsy, and then my own website, and now on Amazon. So I've got different little pockets here and there.
And you do your own art.
Yes.
So it's like you do little paintings and things, right? Drawings and paintings.
Yes, I do paintings, and we have a machine at home that can, we sell the prints just like the art has a print that you can put in your house, but we also have a machine that can put that design onto like a notebook or a rosary pouch or different things like that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's wonderful. So you took your grief and you turned it around and turned it into something that not only helps yourself to cope and helps yourself, but also to spread that hope to other people.
That's the hope, yes.
Yeah, because a lot of people are, suffering obviously in the world and suffering loss. And it sounds like you went through quite a phase there of a lot of loss that probably seemed very senseless loss, where it's like you miscarried 2 babies. This woman who seemingly, was leading a beautiful life to help others in service of others. And then she dies in a car accident. And so that really probably rocked your boat, and you kind of didn't know what to do, what to do with this grief, right?
Right. And it was definitely God driven, because I always tell people I had no idea what I was doing when I started, and each year brings something new and sort of new guidance from him. And it's been great to send it out to other people, but it's also been something for me to have. This has been very helpful for our family in that I don't feel like I'm just drowning in constant mom mode all the time. And that was another. Saint Zelie actually came into my life at that same time when my midwife died. I picked up a book about her, and I had never heard of her before. I actually can't remember what prompted the book, but it was the first book I had read in probably several years, just because at that time I was just 100% mom mode all the time. I didn't allow myself much of anything else. I didn't, and we weren't, like I said, we weren't really sleeping. It was, just kind of survival mode for a long time and trying to just be there for the kids. And then I read this book, and Saint Zelie, it was like reading and getting to know my best friend that I had never known. She just went through a lot of similar trials. And you just mentioned, a lot of women go through the loss of children, miscarriages, or infancy. And if anyone's ever looking for someone to pray to, she's an incredible person to look to. 9 children, but only 5 of them survived adolescence.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she lost 3 of them when they were babies. And then the other one was, I think, like 10 or 11, and she got sick, and they lost her. She also couldn't nurse her children, which I think she died of breast cancer. So I think maybe that might have been linked to why she couldn't, because they obviously couldn't detect that as early as they can now when she was living. So that was one of the reasons that she lost 3 babies, was she had to hire a wet nurse, and the babies had to go live with the wet nurse.
Oh.
And she would go travel to see her babies. And I think it was her husband was coming home from somewhere and just happened to stop in on the wet nurse, and she was neglecting the baby. And by the time they found out, the baby was so malnourished that they couldn't save it. So just things like that, where like she went through so many tremendous suffering as a mom, but she was also a working mom. And by working, I mean she was the main provider for her family as a lace maker. And she would sometimes sleep, 3 hours just to be able to complete her work, but also take care of her family. The other thing about her that I was like, oh my gosh, she hired help. Her husband kind of prompted it, but she hired help. She had someone come and live with them and help with the kids and the meals and the cleaning and all of those things. And that reality just was so good for me to hear. Like, I thought asking for help as a mom meant I was failing. And, obviously this woman is a saint. Her daughter is Saint Therese, who is so famous.
Oh.
Saint Therese is her daughter, and her husband is a saint. And most of her children, actually, I think all of her daughters became nuns, and one of them is on the way to becoming canonized right now.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So obviously a holy woman.
Yes, very. And you were obviously drawn to her.
Yes. And
you even named your company after her, correct?
Yes. It's Zelie Crafts. Yeah. Well, I call it Zelie Crafts because for the longest time, I didn't realize her name was pronounced Zelie. So all my kids know it as Zelie Crafts. So it's too late to change it now.
That's okay. She doesn't mind. She's happy that you've gotten an inspiration from her.
I hope so, yeah.
Well, and it makes me wonder if other women who struggle with these mother issues realize that she is a good saint to pray to.
Yeah, I mean,
or ask for her prayers, I should say.
Yes, I know. And I don't know, I mean, maybe other women know about her. I just had never heard of her. And in my small circle of Catholic moms that I've conversed with, most of them know of her, but I had never.
I hadn't heard of her before.
Yeah.
So I think that's really interesting. And I think she's a good role model because she went through obviously a lot of loss, a lot of pain and suffering regarding being a mother, and yet produced these stellar children. So
yes.
that's amazing. Yeah, wow. And, I do think it's interesting when you're a mother. I mean, I've had 3 children and I have 7 grandchildren, and we all do our best as a mother, and we all, I think, second guess our abilities, second guess if we're doing the right thing. I think we're very hard on ourselves as mothers, and I think it does take a lot of people around to help raise these children in a really good way. And I don't think there's any shame in that. I think when you look back in the day when families used to live together,
right.
grandparents lived with the mom and dad, and there was aunts and uncles, and there was, and they, it takes a village, that sort of mentality. But it's true. It's like, the more help you have around you, there's no shame in that. This is how we should be doing it, is making sure everybody's taken care of. There's days where some moms are at their top of their game and other moms are sick, or other moms have to take care of other children. And y'all just have to pitch in. And that's how it should be.
I agree.
And I do know there's a lot of pressure more and more as I think we're going along, with social media and things like that, where people are comparing themselves to other moms' styles. And you know your family better than anybody does. And you have to sit down with your husband and you have to say, okay, what's going to work for our family? What should we be doing to do the right thing, to raise our children up, in a very good, wholesome, healthy way?
Right.
And then when you need help, ask for help. There's no shame in that. I really am a big believer in stay-at-home moms. I was a stay-at-home mom. I kind of didn't have a choice because of my disability, but my husband at the time was very supportive of that. And he said, no, this is your job. You're doing the job of 15 people, and we need you here. And so I stayed at home with my children the entire time. My daughter stays home with her 5 children. But she does have a side business. She does own a fitness business.
Oh, wow.
And so I feel like when a mom can figure out a way to bring extra money into the family, or to do something, whether it's a paying job or a volunteer job or something where they are doing some outside things, all that does is make the mom even more of a powerhouse. And it teaches the children that, yes, mommy loves us. Yes, we are very important to mommy. But also, this helps mommy to be an individual and helps mommy to be a stronger force. And it's a really good role model for your children. No matter what it is, whatever it is for moms, yours is creative. But my daughter's she's a physical person. But boy, it's teaching her children that, she's working at home, she's right there for them, but she's teaching them healthy habits. You're showing, your creative side, and that's something that, that can inspire them. So that's awesome. I love that.
I completely agree. That's great for your daughter. It's amazing she does that with 5. I commend her. That's incredible.
Well, they all, pitch in and help too, so.
Yeah, you have to.
It's quite a range. It's from 14 down to 2. So it's, but they all really help each other. But I do feel like you're a really good inspiration as far as not letting things that could have just leveled you or things that could have turned you away from the Lord and you could have just been mad at him. That happens a lot with people when they have loss, when they suffer loss. They get mad at God and they take a while to get back. So I think you started out with a really good foundation, and that's probably one of the reasons you were able to continue on. Is that safe to say or fair to say?
Yeah, and I did get mad. I definitely got mad, and especially when my daughter was born. She was born with health issues that it was like 2 years of just not knowing how to help her, and she was in pain. So for me, that was probably when I was at my lowest in my journey as a mom, where I could not understand why God would let my baby be in pain. Obviously she had done nothing wrong. She was just born. But like you said, I had a firm foundation, and I knew that I didn't want to lose that. I knew how important it was to me, and that nothing, no amount of suffering was worth letting go of that. But I think there is something to be said with letting yourself feel those things, so that it is okay to get mad, so that you can then get past that. Whereas if you're pretending like you're fine, but really there's a lot going on, I think, God already knows what we're thinking and feeling. So if I'm pretending like I'm okay with him, but really I'm festering inside, that's not going to help me or my relationship with him. And that was, again, something I had to come to terms with, that, I got mad at someone that I, held very dear. But again, like in a marriage, it's the same thing. You have to get those feelings out, and it's only going to hurt the both of you if you just pretend that everything's fine. And so that was, in a way, a beautiful experience for me to come to him and say, I am so lost in this. I don't understand this. I don't feel loved by you right now. I feel, the opposite of it. But then when I finally got out of that place, you just realize how much you were loved. And now I know next time when I'm leveled, and I recently was leveled again in my motherhood. And this time, instead of getting angry and turning away, I ran to him and was like, don't let go of me. Don't let me let go this time. Please hold on to me. And, I got through it so much faster. And he is there. And when you offer up that suffering and you connect it with him and what he did for you, it makes it a world of difference. And you don't have to understand why it's happening, and letting go of that need to understand it, and just being able to say, okay, I'm suffering, please stay with me.
Right. And I think that's really good advice, because I know Simon and I are going through a lot of things right now, and it is hard, where you're going, where are you, Lord? And we're trying to be so faithful, and please help us, please show us what you want. And ultimately, obviously we trust him and we know he knows best. And then if you can take these things that are challenges, or things that are meant to level you, or to, they're meant to rock your world, if you can turn and think, what's the good thing that's coming out of this? Like, what is the lesson to be learned in this? So that, so next time you're not as taken off guard, or you think, okay, I've been through these other things. I can make it through this. You get that strength. And like they say, he always has something good that's going to come out of a trauma. And I also believe the more we go through, the more we can help others with what we've been through. Because like just hearing you talk, again, I'm hearing in my mind the women I know that are really struggling, who are really wanting to have a baby, or who've lost these babies, and they're just devastated. Sometimes it helps to hear, I've never lost a baby. I've never had a miscarriage. So I can be loving and kind and caring to people, but I really can't put myself in their spot, because I've never been in their spot. And sometimes it's really comforting to hear from somebody who's been through something. You say, oh, I'm not alone. Like, she went through it, and maybe there's hope for me. And maybe that's the reason why God had you go through this, was to be hope to others.
We'll be right back.
Tracks for the Journey is dedicated to your spiritual, emotional, and relational well-being. Host Larry Payne provides insight and inspiration from Christian spirituality, positive psychology, and justice ethics. His decades of ministry and professional counseling offer helps for living in every episode. Choose one of many episodes on a huge variety of subjects on your provider today.
Yeah, and I think Saint Zelie is a good example of that even years and years and years later, she saved me in a lot of ways and saved my motherhood in a lot of ways. So I think the more that women can open up about, and it's hard to talk about losing a child and especially miscarriages because it's so easy to hide that. You don't have to talk about it if you don't want to, because unless you told somebody you're pregnant, they're not going to know. So it is easy to hide that suffering, and I think that's why a lot of women are alone in it. But like you just said, the more people open up about it, the more they realize that they're not alone and that other people have gone through it and survived it. And, even you with this podcast, it's a beautiful testimony, especially, where you do open up about your suffering and your accident. That one in particular for me was wow. Just going through that and being a mom in that halo device you talked about, I just can't even imagine. So, obviously other people need that motivation. Life is hard if you think you're by yourself.
Right. And I do think that, we don't know everybody's stories, and you look at people, especially again on social media, and you go, oh, everything's going great for them. It's like, well, you don't know the backstory. You don't know the suffering people are going through. They're putting on their best face, and that's fine. That's fine to a degree, but it really does help when you open up and you're honest and you say, oh gosh, we're really having a rough time with this, because that way, I think it like I say, it gives other people hope, but it's just, if you're going to go through suffering, you hope it's going to be that something good is going to come out. And it might not be the good might not be for us, but it might be for other people. And again, God knows what he's doing, but I know a lot of people really get stuck in their trauma or in their things that are going on, and they just feel alone in it. And when you know that, again, it's like when I think I'm suffering, I'll look at the cross and I look at Jesus on there and I think, okay, I'm good. I'm good. But he definitely, he's obviously the ultimate role model in, taking on suffering and just trusting in his Father. And it's not easy. It's not an easy thing. And, so I really think you yourself are a great role model. I think a lot of my listeners will really identify with a lot of things you've gone through. You and I also talked about just like working mom challenges. So what are some of the things that you're met with besides time, I would say?
Time and the guilt is something that I've had to work through, and it gets easier each year, but just feeling guilty that I'm doing something apart from the kids is still something that I do have to work on. And a big way that I deal with that is by making a lot of my work done beside my children. So when I'm painting, I'm usually doing it with them painting next to me, or when they're playing outside and I can see them. And but I never finish a painting in one sitting. It's like 15 minutes and then I have to go help somebody, or 10 minutes and then going to change a diaper. That's been the biggest help for me, is to be okay with constant interruptions and to know that that's okay and that I will get back to it. And it's just nice to know that it's waiting for me, when I'm starting to get just bogged down and wanting something non-mom mode. It's nice to know my painting, and when I get the next break, I get to go sit down and I get to work on that. And so just knowing that there's something to look forward to, and that the constant interruptions are a part of being a mom with young kids, and accepting that and embracing that is something beautiful. And a lot of my mom friends with older kids have told me, and it's hard to do this when you're in it constantly, but they'll tell me, after the age of 10, they're not going to want to talk to you every second, and you're going to miss. And that hits for me because I really adore talking to my kids. The baby phase for me is not fun, but when they're toddlers and they start to talk and interact with me, oh, I love it. Like I could gobble that up. So that hits for me. Okay, I'm going to savor each and every minute that they, just adore you, and they want your attention every second. And while sometimes that can be like, oh my gosh, I need a minute. Just remembering that that's not going to always be there is helpful too.
Right.
And,
Definitely not. It's a phase, but I also think that as you raise your children, you can also raise them to fit into the ideal of what you're trying to achieve in your family. So yes, that there's a point where it's like they want to go off and do their own thing. But if you continue doing things as a family, or you just present things where this is just how we do it, there's not a choice. One of the things I love that I've recently realized is I've gone and watched 2 of my grandchildren play basketball. So there's 5 of them, and only 2 are playing basketball, but they all go. So they all go to support. Even the 14-year-old who probably doesn't want to be there necessarily, he's not only there, he's sitting, he's cheering, he's watching. He's not on his phone. He's not hanging out outside. So it's like my daughter's just made that's a thing. You will come and you will support your brother and sister playing basketball. And then when it's your turn and you're playing a sport, they need to come and support you. We did that with my kids. My 2 boys needed to go cheer their sister on and in her sports, So I do think as the parents, you decide. I think, what if your children get really inspired by you and then they start creating and they become a part of your company too? If they're working alongside of you now, that might turn into a thing. And wouldn't that be cool?
It would be. It would.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that, I get what you're saying about you don't necessarily, wouldn't want your children to think that something else is more important or taking time away from them. But I think that children realize, again, like good time management. I know you homeschool your kids, right?
I do. Right now, just my daughter, because my son is only 3. So, and she's 6. So she's the only one I'm actively working with.
So, I mean, that's also a thing where a lot of children go off to school for the day and then mom's home doing, her job or her creative thing, but you have your children around all the time. And again, that is temporary. And I just think, if you can schedule in time where it's like, this is school time, this is creative time, this is mommy work time. There's nothing wrong with teaching a child a good schedule. I mean, I'm a schedule girl, so
yeah.
I think that's a benefit to children. And I do know moms out there. I mean, maybe I'm making a big grand statement here, but I would say a lot of Catholic moms probably are trying to homeschool or, have more control over their child's education, because as we know in the world, schools aren't the safest spot for Christian Catholics and with our morals and ethics. So, I mean, I think what you're doing is very commendable and very, your children are only going to benefit from everything you're doing.
Thank you. I hope so.
Yeah. And I think you're, like I said, you're an inspiration. I think moms can look at you and it's okay to have guilt sometimes. It's okay to think you're not doing the best job. If you're showing up and you're being loving, kind, caring, and you're trying to give your child a great life, you're doing great. Like, imagine all the parents out there that they're choosing to do other things than spend time with their children that might not be beneficial to their children. They're doing it out of selfishness. So it's okay on occasion to say, I need to get away. My husband and I are going to go have a date, or we need a weekend away, or I just need to go on a walk by myself. That's all fine. No shame in that. But it's the parents where it's like, oh, I just don't have time for my kids. I'm just going to go ship them off. And, that's not so great. But I think what you're doing, I think it is very typical. It is very normal for a mom to maybe have some guilt and everything. But I think you're doing amazing. So what's some advice you have for moms who are struggling?
Main advice would be to ask for help. That's something that I really struggled with when I was a first-time mom. Kind of like I mentioned before, I thought asking for help meant that I wasn't doing a good job. And like you mentioned, it couldn't be further from the truth. We were never meant to do this by ourselves. And like you said before, it's the job of 15 people and one person can't do it. And when you try to, it doesn't serve anybody. So that would be my biggest advice, is to not be ashamed or afraid to ask for help. And this has been my healthiest postpartum because I have been asking for help constantly. And help can be, will you hold the baby for 10 minutes so that I can go sit and not hold a baby? Because you're holding them constantly. And while that's wonderful and it's snuggly, it's also like, where are my arms? And can I just breathe for a minute without someone touching me? And maybe a first-time mom who just had the baby won't relate to that, but after you've had maybe 3 or 4 and you're just on you constantly, like, you just time to not be touched is helpful. So not being afraid to ask for that. And I also asked my mom, and not everybody has a mom who could do this, but I asked my mom to stay for a month because I was having some digestive problems and I needed to see my doctor. And I told her I'm never going to get to the doctor if I don't have somebody here to help me get there. And she did, and it was wonderful, but I never would have asked her to do that.
Oh, that's a great mom.
Yes, she is phenomenal. And that's the other thing. Like, when you ask for help, you allow people to step up and be these wonderful examples of sainthood for you and for your kids. Like, I was just so inspired by my mom when I finally allowed her to help me, and gave her that opportunity. She just stepped in and completely blew me away and I just said, will you just stay, for a little while, and she just kept staying and didn't want to go until she could see that I was feeling like myself again. So letting people help you is huge. And the other thing I did that I didn't do last time was I decorated where I'm gonna be in a lot of, like, the room where I'm gonna be a lot with my baby and kind of feel stuck and isolated. I put pictures of my paintings, but it can be for anything, for anyone. I put paintings of Jesus and Mary and Jesus hugging me all over my walls. And for some people, maybe it's like nature scenes or mountains or something, but surround yourself with inspiration and positivity so that in those low moments, you have something to look at and can be reminded, okay, no, I'm okay. Everything's okay, and just get grounded. And then also get outside and take walks.
Yes, I'm a big believer in getting fresh air, getting some, quiet time. This is why, God made us in a marriage as a couple also, so that you have a backup. It's
Yes.
not just a one-man show. It's,
Right.
it's the two of you. And I think both mom and dad have gifts that they can give the children. And even if, it's like, let me, you hold the baby while I'm, going to go take a shower, and they can handle it. They're fine. The men, it's like, I remember I wasn't very good about that when my kids were growing up. It's like, I'll do it. I'll take care of the babies, but we need to really let the dads be dads too, and spend time with the children and have their little rituals with them as well. And, have your schedule of this. When you're doing this with the children, I'm going to go do this. I think it's a good team sport being
Yes,
parents.
so true.
It is so true. So I do think fresh air is really good. I do think a schedule is really good. I do think asking for help is great. I do think, even now and then when you're feeling frustrated, have a good cry.
Yes.
I remember I was crying one time and my mom said, don't cry. And my husband said, you can cry. Cry it out, like vent it out, get it out. It's okay to cry. It's okay to be frustrated, and then get past it. As my mom would say, splash some cold water in your face and move on, But being a mother it's a very hard job, as we all know, but it's the most worthwhile job. And, all the women out there that are struggling to have children, don't give up hope. If you're not able to have children, if you are drawn to adopt children, that would be wonderful. See what God has planned for you, and listen to these stories. Look at Zelie. I think she's a great saint to look to. I mean, I think that's somebody that people should look into and research and have her pray for you and intercede in your journey as a mother.
Yeah. What's beautiful is a lot of her letters were saved. So you can actually read her correspondence. And in a lot of her letters, she talks about being exhausted and about crying. And she's just very human, which is so nice to find in a saint that you can relate to. But she still, clung to Jesus. And she usually finishes her letters with, I can't exact words, but basically, thy will, not mine. And when her letter is like, I can't believe my baby's gone. I'm broken. And then she ends it with, thy will, not mine. So it's just, really a great person to look to.
Beautiful. So in the show notes, I'll put a link to your website so people can go to your website and check out your art. And then you have a book.
Yes.
So tell me about that.
So the book is something I wrote this postpartum when my son was born. And so all three of my kids, something about nursing my milk does not agree with their digestive systems. And with my daughter, we didn't realize it until I had been nursing for over a year. And then when my son was born, he had the same symptoms. So we stopped after a month. And then this third time we tried again. And again, it was the same thing. So I had to wean it a week. And for some reason, this third time just broke me. I just, again, was just leveled and felt like I was failing. And I can produce milk. It's right there and they want it and they're nursing beautifully, but it hurts them. So it's this really unnatural process of weaning because they want it, I want to give it to them, but I'm denying it. So it just feels, the whole process is just it's very disconcerting for me and for them because, crying for it and I can't give it. But like I said, I clung to Jesus and he and I were talking, and the book that I wrote is basically what he said to me. And he told me to write it down. So I did. And at first it was just for me and something I read during the weaning process, just every day reading it and crying and reading it. And then he told me to share it. And I just sort of, while I'm holding my son sleeping, was formatting this book and putting it together. And I had no idea what I was doing. But by the grace of God, I was able to figure out all these wonderful things about book printing. And I self-published it, so I didn't have to wait on a back and forth with a publisher. I just wanted it to get out so women could read it. That's the main goal, is just so that whoever needs it can find it and hopefully have it comfort them, which is so funny because one of my friends just had a baby and she's been able to nurse all 5 of her kids, and this one she can't. There's something about the baby's just not gaining weight. And so I gave her one of my books. So it's just, I guess maybe that was the first person God had intended it for. But
we've been doing a few episodes here where it's about actually opening up your ears to hear the Lord when he's speaking to you. And it's when he's guiding us to do something or telling us to do something. Some people would just not do it. But it's like you listened, you did it, and now it's helping your friend. It was good for you just to go through that process. But then even if you help just that one person, it's worth it. Of course, you want to help a bunch of people, and you will. But, I mean, how exciting that your friend needed help and you were able to give her this book.
Yeah, it's amazing. God is so good. And when you don't understand what you're doing, he can make it work, which is nice.
Yeah, that's amazing. So I will put the links to everything on the show notes.
Thank you.
Well, I do think you're going to help a lot of people, and I think that life is not always fun, and it's not easy, certainly, and we do have things we have to go through, and God has a plan, and we just, again, I don't want to sound contrite. I don't want to sound like I'm just brushing off people's trauma. Certainly not. I mean, I go through a lot of trauma myself, so it's more about, like you say, it's okay to be mad. It's okay to question, like, hey, where are you? Why am I going through this? It's okay to be in pain. It's okay to struggle. but then we have to allow him to show us what he has in store for us, or what's the next thing for us, and to trust him.
Absolutely. And you're a good example of that, for sure.
I am trying. So I really enjoyed talking to you today, and I'm so glad we made this work. You in your little cone of silence. I love it. You might just stay in there for a while. You might just wait till they come looking for you. Maybe you could get some emails written. Maybe you could take a nap. A nap in the car.
Maybe one day I'm going to be back. I'm already thinking of all the possible scenarios of what could be going wrong.
I know. I've kept you long enough. Okay, well, thank you, Madeleine. I really appreciate you coming, and thanks for coming. I appreciate you and your time, and go give those babies big hugs and kisses from Fresh
Thank
Catholic.
You for doing this, and especially when you're not feeling well. Thank you.
I know. I'm on the mend. Okay. All right. See you later. Thank you. Love you. Bye. Thank you for joining me today. Now go out and be a bright light in someone's life. And remember, be focused, be faithful, and be fresh. Fresh Catholic is produced, edited, and recorded at Wonder Mouse Studios in Ventura, California.